भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। We are meeting almost after a month, and as usual, the alternate Saturday class on Vedanta and the science of human possibilities will be the topic of our discussion. So, till now, we have given a brief outline of what Vedanta is and how does it translate into our own life, in our own actions. The attitude that we have with the world around us, the attitude we have with people who are near and dear, the attitude we have with ourselves, which is more important, an often neglected aspect of our life. They are known as existential problems. My problems begin with my own existence. And then it connects with the existences of our people who are connected to me by way of marriage, by way of birth. These are secondary things. As Yajnavalkya mentions in one of the Upanishads, that it is for the sake of self that the wife loves the husband. It is for the sake of the self that the husband loves the wife. It is for the sake of the self that the child is loved by the father or mother, whatever it is. So the self is most important, and it's logical because that is connected ultimately with our own existence as an individual. So there is that famous story. It has been observed that the mother of, when they conducted this experiment with monkeys. So the monkeys, the mother of the young one, they poured water. They just just to test how the mother reacts when there is danger. This experiment is a famous experiment. So the mother, they started pouring water in a big enclosure, and the water started rising. And then it saw that the water, till the water came up to the neck, the mother monkey was holding the child in her hand, raising it over the head. But when the water started coming towards the nostrils and she knew that she would drown now, she immediately dropped that monkey and tried to save itself. So that's just an experiment. It may not happen. In some human beings, they may even die holding the child. There are noble people who die for others' sake. But the question is, the self is more dear to us than anything else in the world. Though we may say we are unselfish and we love the whole world, but it comes rarely to a person who is attached to the world. It comes to a person who has understood the basic principles of Vedanta, which is that spirit alone is real and the material or the gross things that you see is not unreal, but it is temporary. It has a temporary value. So that is what we were discussing. So what is the nature? And what are the human possibilities? Vedanta and the science of human possibilities, as the topic suggests, means one thing. What are the possibilities that we can explore? That as human beings, we have physical possibilities. Maybe we can become good sportsmen, have a nice physique, and explore all the physical possibilities. Like some people have wonderful endurance. They can even climb extreme peaks in extreme weather. So they have almost attained the limits of physical possibilities. For example, they break records. Some of them have superhuman energy in the body, and also, of course, supported by the mind, to do much better than the common people. And that's why they are record holders. They do great physical feats. So that is one way of expressing human possibilities. We don't say that it is wrong. We start with physical possibilities. But then we find that in spite of all the physical possibilities that we have developed as a result of going to the gym and anything, any exercise, diet, and all those things, we still find we are vulnerable as far as the mind is concerned. So there are mental possibilities. A very strong man need not have a very strong mind. He may be emotionally totally easily disturbed. He may have a very disturbed emotional life when he has to deal with his near and dear ones. He may not be adjusted, though he has a very good physique, very good health. So the emotional or the intellectual possibilities also have to be explored. And they are also equally important, if not more. They are definitely more important than physical possibilities. Otherwise, a few intelligent people would not rule a whole country. They rule not because of their physical strength, but because of their intellectual acumen. So, intellectual possibility is the second one, slightly higher in the hierarchy, which Vedanta asks you to explore before coming to the higher possibilities. Most of the people stop with this. They feel that once they have attained certain skill sets, which are intellectual possibilities, they've achieved whatever they want to achieve intellectually. Then they try to explore how they can either become rich, powerful, or whatever they want to achieve in life with the help of those skill sets. No doubt that is how a majority of human beings live in this world. They are definitely exploring their, if not the physical, at least the intellectual. Some may be physically very weak, but intellectually very strong and capable of earning a lot of money or power and so many things. So that is, each human being either explores the physical and the intellectual and a little bit of emotional, because there are artists who express their emotions through their art, through music. So that's a slightly higher expression of the, or slightly higher exploration of the human potential. They're not just happy with being rich or maybe physically fit. They just want something higher than that. They want to be creative. They want to express their emotions in art, in dance, or whatever the fine arts. That's why it is known as fine arts, which appeal to the finer mind, not to the gross mind. Gross mind is happy with the skill sets and a job and a career and money. That's fine. But there are some people who are not even satisfied with that. They have certain inherent skills and their emotions are trying to express themselves in these different fields, which may not be part of their profession, but they still want to excel. Then they feel, oh, we have achieved what we want physically, good health, we have achieved what we want materially by way of a good job, but then still we are unfulfilled. So we want to express certain talents which we have, which help us to solve or handle our emotional aspect of our mind. So that is known as, that's why there are so many fine arts. Fine arts can be a career also, but it can be a hobby as well. But human beings want to express because they feel that they cannot stop. No human being is satisfied. That is why, and everything can be traced to the self. So if you feel happy, if your existence is able to justify the action that you're doing, if you're not able to justify what you're doing, if somebody forces you to do certain things, your mind is not happy. So though you may be skilled, but somehow your heart is not after that job or after that skill which you have developed, which is literally forcing you to do it as a task, a burden. Just do it because I have to survive. Then your other possibilities of which want to express themselves remain unfulfilled. So that is one of the reasons why these existential problems are not as simple as we think, because there are physical possibilities, mental, intellectual possibilities, emotional possibilities. So we have to go on exploring this subject which we have taken. Vedanta just tells you, don't stop. There is a famous Sanskrit phrase, charai veti. Chara eva iti means just keep walking, keep going forward. if you recollect, Sri Ramakrishna used to give a beautiful example, because all the Vedantic principles he expressed through stories. And the stories are very powerful. They express more than the Sanskrit texts and the commentaries that we have. So one of the stories Sri Ramakrishna used to say, why we should explore higher and higher possibilities. If we really want to be fulfilled in this life, then we can't just stop somewhere. We have to continuously go. Chara eva iti means chara eva iti. You just walk forward. How long we should walk? Where should we go? What should be our goal? If you ask, there is no end till you become totally free. That's what our moksha or mukti. But before that, there are so many possibilities that we want to explore. As I told you, a sportsman may want to explore his physical possibilities to the extreme. He wants to do the best. He wants to break all the world records. That's fine. That is at the physical level. But then there may be people who think that there are higher levels which we want to explore before we die. So Vedanta, as the science of human possibilities, makes it a very scientific quest for, you may say, total fulfillment, to settle or to solve all our existential issues. Because the only thing we can't deny is our own existence. And as long as we exist, there will be these existential problems. Problems of identity, problems of ego, problems of emotions, because everything is connected to that self. So now you perhaps get an idea why Yajnavalkya said it is for the self that the whole world is important to us. If the self were not there, if we were not fond of our own selves, every action that we do is for our own self, directly or indirectly. It is only when we consider this self to be very trivial and we become really spiritual, then we start thinking of other selves. We express through other selves. But I'm not speaking of that. We are still dealing with our own problems, our own selves. We are not speaking of an ideal situation, nor have we reached that situation where we can just forget ourselves and think of other selves. That would be possible for a saint, or that would be possible for an incarnation. But forgetting of self is right now our own criteria, because, or fulfilling the self, not forgetting forgetting the little self, but trying to find out what is this higher self. Now, we also discussed, and now we'll go back to where we left. There was a problem which is being raised now by scientists, the problem of consciousness. This is the problem of existence, which none of us can deny. Everybody wants to exist. If some people want to exist in the physical body, some people want to live as long as possible. If not, they at least act in such a way that their life in heaven will be nice. So they make preparations now itself. There's so many religions, even within Hinduism. So the existence, you never doubt. You want the life to continue. Or some people who believe in rebirth, they work in such a way that they get a better birth. Oh, you will see many people in India saying, oh, this life has been wasted. This life was full of suffering. Towards the end of their life, they say, at least the next birth should be nice. We should be born. And Gita promises. Gita says that none of your spiritual practices will be lost. You will be born in a conducive family. That's the assurance given by Sri Krishna. So there's nothing wrong in people wanting a better birth. It's not a dream. It's not just a dream. That they have worked hard for that. For some reason, they have not attained to that goal. And Arjuna was also afraid of that. If I don't attain the goal before I die, what will happen? So Sri Krishna very wisely tells him, it's not like material property which you have to leave behind. No, you will be taking all those actions, all the karma which you have done. Whatever you have stored, that will help you in the next birth. Because that doubt remains. Arjuna was very gross. He thought it's like death. I die,
तो
I'll
रोज
lose
फोन
my
करे,
whole, whatever I have acquired, whatever I
कल
have
रोज ही फोन
gained
करे,
through this warfare,
रोज फोन करे
I'll be
at
losing
first.
if I die. So, or at least I'll be have to leave
हाँ,
it behind,
चलो
maybe for my children, but at least it will not be with me. So the
हाँ,
similar thing may be happening. All my spiritual
ना এখন तो फिर
practices,
भी ना
once I
এখন
die,
ওখানেই থাকবে কিছুদিন,
who will inherit that? So Sri
তো
Krishna says, no, nothing is
করছে
lost,
ওই
because
ওর
the doer
বন্ধুরা
of
মাঝে
good,
মধ্যে
I
ওকে
mean the
পেছন
doer of
দেখতে বলে ডাকে,
one who
ওই
practices
এখানে কিছু
spirituality,
কাজ ছিল
that's
না
the
বলে
only thing
আমার
you
বোন
take with
হচ্ছিল
you. The
যে
Sukshma Sharira
হ্যাঁ
takes
ভীষণ বোর
all
হচ্ছিল,
the
তাই দেখলে তো বোর হয় না
samskaras
কোনোদিন।
and all the actions, the fruits of the actions which are stored in a very subtle way, they follow you even after death. So that's why they say the only thing that follows you are good deeds. So do good deeds. In the Ishopanishad, there is a last verse of the Ishopanishad, they say Kritosmara, means remember the good deeds, at least when you are dying, if you have done. If you don't have, then you will only remember the bad deeds. The evil person, obviously you can't expect him, because so the Upanishad says, first live nicely, do your duties, and first few verses, and finally they say, when the time comes to go, remember your good deeds, because they are going to follow you to the next birth. But that is the part of existence. So everyone, we have to agree now, as we discussed last time, that cannot deny our existence. We exist as long as we exist, either in this birth, even at the point of death, we exist, because we know we are going to die. We are afraid of death. We are afraid of sickness. We are afraid of so many things. So that shows that we don't want to, don't want to not to exist. We want to exist. So existence is one quality. And then we saw we are also conscious, whether we are in sleep, whether you are even the dream, even waking state, dream also we are conscious, because otherwise who will realize? We always say, I had a bad dream or a good dream. So even when you are sleeping, obviously we are conscious of ourselves, though not as clearly as when we are waking, we are in the waking state. We are aware of our waking state. We see everything around us. In the dream state, the objects change, but still that I is observing. The feeling that I have had a dream, or I had a very bad dream, a nightmare, or I had a good dream, still that I is involved. Then the question may be asked, in deep sleep, there is no dream, there is no waking state. Where does the world go? Do I still feel my existence? Yes, you have the feeling of your existence, because when you get up, if you have really slept well, if you had a sushupti or deep sleep, which is of course rare, we don't have sushupti all the time. 90% of the time it is all dream state. That's why when you get up, you feel you have not slept enough, because you didn't have your quota of deep sleep. But who realizes that? It is you only. It is we only realize that, oh, I didn't have a good sleep today. You don't say that I was not aware. I don't know how long I slept. You definitely know. We definitely know that we didn't have good sleep for a long time. We had more of dream, more of disturbance, and we woke up several times. So we just feel disturbed. So that existential problem has to be addressed, that I exist, Sat. Next problem was that that consciousness which observes all these things. Waking state, I observe, I am conscious. If you ask a biologist, he will say it is just because of the brain. Because once you go into coma, you don't observe anything, the consciousness goes away. No, consciousness doesn't go. Then how do you explain that if he somehow comes back from coma, he still has that consciousness in him? So consciousness does not, it is futile. We discussed this in great detail, but still it's worth repeating that consciousness is not a function of the heart or brain. This is very difficult to understand from the Western psychology point of view, because they always assume when you say consciousness, they mean the consciousness associated with the body and the mind. Now, to imagine a consciousness beyond body and the mind is very difficult. That's why we have to discuss about it very carefully. So one thing is they may not accept it, or the Western biologists or even people who are dealing with neurology and other subjects, they will definitely say that consciousness is expressed through the brain. Obviously, I think, I do everything through my brain. But then what about the heart? Okay, because the Chinese believe that uh, the center of the brain is the heart, because they feel, how do you explain emotions? They don't come from the brain, they come from the deep feeling within. So they say, okay, whether it is heart or brain, we accept both the centers. Because when we say buddhi, we say the buddhi is in the heart. We don't say buddhi, not the buddhi as we use it in vernacular language. When people lightly say, you don't have buddhi, means you are an idiot. That not that buddhi. This buddhi is a technical word for the center of consciousness, which is the heart. So the radiance of consciousness, the explanation given by Vedantins, is the consciousness expresses through the brain, but it is not a property of the brain. Like we saw, just as we see some radioactive substance or maybe some luminous substance, when the light falls, it seems to radiate light. Though that is the nature of that luminescent substance, or nature of the lamp. To you switch on the current and you get light. Yeah, we are not speaking of that light, not that radiance. That is borrowed radiance. It's electric power that is lighting the bulb, or maybe it is the inherent chemical property which gives a reflection and feeling that the light is it is luminescent. This paint and all those things you see, it's a physical property. So scientists say, why can't this consciousness be a physical property of the brain? When you are living, when you are thinking, when you are doing all these actions, just as the baby grows, its consciousness grows. That is how they argue. But Vedanta says it is likely that the consciousness, or the pure consciousness which is behind, it uses the brain and mind, because mind is made of subtle matter. The reflection is more. See, for example, if you have a mirror and a hard stone, you will find the reflection of the light reflecting more in the mirror. You don't see the reflection. Not that the light is not falling on the stone. It is still falling, but it is reflecting very little. Whereas a polished surface will reflect more. So that is why they say body also is conscious. Otherwise, we cannot get that feeling when we say the body is conscious. That consciousness is borrowed from the original consciousness, but the mind is more subtle and more polished than the body. So the mind reflects more of the consciousness. And then they say the buddhi reflects still more. That is why buddhi gives you a clear understanding of there. As I told you many times, it is worth remembering that mind and buddhi, they are both parts of the same mind. What we call as mind in English is divided into manas, buddhi, ahankara, and chitta. So we have to understand the distinction between this. It is increasing order of subtlety that the mind can be divided into four. Just as you divide the body into the physical body, the blood, the prana, and the forces that heartbeat and all those things. There are forces which run the body. Similarly, there are different levels of the mind which are more and more subtle. It's like a layered mind. The lowest mind is the most crude mind, that is action and reaction. That is very closely connected with our sense organs. Something happens, there is an input, and we immediately react. Even animals react. If they see fire, they run away. This is known as a mind, a manas. This is known as manas. It is just a reactive mind. That's not a right word, but we can say it is a reactive mind, a lower. Even that reactive mind can be trained. You see, we think intelligent people, like an intelligent dog, you can train the dog in such a way that it can react in a very, very intelligent manner. It knows what to do, what not to do. Don't think animals are less intelligent physically. I mean, from the point of view of manas, sometimes they are sharper than us. They can smell, they can sense things before human beings can do. So their manas is very strong. So the same manas we also have, but it is gross. It is connected with our sense organs. That is why it is known as manas. Mano buddhya ahankara chittani naham. When Shankaracharya composed this, he said mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankar. I am not these. Why did he have to say? He could have simply said, I am not the mind. But he didn't say, because even the mind has different levels. So the lower mind is known as manas, which is every one of us has. The more skilled we are, the better manas we have. Some people are very skilled, either in games or even solving some problems, typing things, computers, singing songs. They're very skilled because that their manas has been, through repeated training, the manas has developed. But that doesn't mean that person is wise. He still may be a fool when it comes to spirituality or moral values. Why? Because his buddhi is not developed. Buddhi means a more finer aspect of the same mind which reflects more light of the Atman. It's more conscious. It is conscious means, you see, when you ask a person, he can react in a very crude way, but he can take a conscious decision whether I should get angry or not, whether I should react or not. An intelligent person, we call such a person a wise person. He has buddhi in the technical sense, in the sense, the way, not buddhi. An intelligent person also can be said he is buddhiman because he is more skilled. He is a better IT engineer than somebody else. Then he can be, you can't say he's having more buddhi. He may have less buddhi than a farmer. If you take the Sanskrit definition of buddhi, buddhi just means you know how to make choices in life. It's a simple definition, but it's important. Choices in life, to decide what is good, what is bad, mind will never tell you. Mind will just tell you, it will give you a shortcut, and you'll just do what is pleasurable, what is easy for you. For example, you don't need to tell a dog or a animal in the forest that there is a fire, you have to run. It will automatically run. Crude mind is enough for that. You don't need buddhi, development of buddhi for that. But you need buddhi to find ways and means how to face the eventuality and try to find out how far it can harm me. All these things are higher skills. And the decisions we take using our manas can be very crude. We just take the path of least resistance. We think, oh, this is difficult, I should avoid. This is good. But people who have foresight, or you may say wisdom, or have a buddhi developed slightly higher than other people, they can make choices after a lot of discrimination, which is in Sanskrit known as viveka. So viveka is a faculty. The result, the viveka is developed in us as a result of the radiance of consciousness shining brightly there. Unfortunately, for most of the people, it shines in the physical body or at the most in the manas. But it doesn't, the buddhi is not developed so that it can shine properly, or the wisdom can be developed properly. So we make the right choice at the right time in our life so that we don't become unhappy. So that buddhi, we see, though both the brain and the, I'm talking from the point of view of a scientist now, that the radiance of the mind, or the which is expressed to the brain, the radiance of the heart, the spiritual heart, all are connected by a nervous system. So they definitely influence mental functions. You can't just say everything is wrong, neurology is not. They are absolutely correct at a gross level. But there are higher things than that. The other possibilities also you have to explore. Because in general, people see the seat of thought, or seat of, let's say, universal belief in all culture, the seat of thinking is the head and the seat of feelings is the heart. Nobody will deny that. Even the Chinese, in fact, say that even the head is located in the heart. So that is how Confucius and all, that's why they said you develop a good heart so that you don't make wrong decisions. Because the head will confuse you. It will tell you things which are not good for you. It may be pleasant, but it may not be good. So it may be Preya, but not Shreya. Here Nachiketa was very clearly told the distinction. Things that appear to be good, beneficial, may not be good. Things that are painful sometimes may be good, like medicine. So the distinction between Shreya and Preya is what is referred to here. And they say that there is more reflection of the light of consciousness in the buddhi. The seat of buddhi is supposed to be the heart. So that is why there is so much of importance given in spiritual training for the development of buddhi rather than the mind. Manas anybody can develop, even animals can develop that. But the buddhi development takes place through a spiritual process. That's the beginning of spirituality. So the close connection, of course, as I said, the close connection between the brain and the states of consciousness cannot be denied. Because you see, there are mental disorders. There are certain basic disorders. You may give that example. Suppose a child is born autistic. Is it not a malfunction of the brain that is responsible? So he's not conscious. He's not conscious. He cannot use his wisdom. He cannot take informed decisions. He cannot think the way intelligent people think because it's just physical. It's just a brain function. So scientists hurriedly conclude that disorders of the brain is a very clear example that your mind or the consciousness can act only through the mind. Now the states of intoxication, you suppose intoxicate somebody with some wine or something, then he starts behaving in a peculiar way. Then you say, see, the effect of chemicals has changed his thinking. And then we jump to the conclusion that his consciousness has also changed. Then anesthesia, delirium, there are so many other states. So that also point out, see here, we are not denying that Vedanta does not accept these things to be true. They are true. But there are higher possibilities which we should also explore. If we are really scientific, then we should not stop with this simple explanation of the brain. Though it is not simple, obviously neuroscientists are working day and night to find different explanations for certain mystical phenomena, certain visions. And you have to explain because as a scientist, you need, there is an intense desire. If a person is searching after truth, whether he's a scientist or any field, if he's searching for truth through his field, he should be sincere and he should accept. If he observes certain phenomena which his neuroscience does not accept, then he has to say that maybe there is another field. He should not say that, oh, my neuroscience says that if a person is unconscious, because Sri Ramakrishna's case that was seen, Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar, who was a MD in modern medicine. Of course, he became a homeopath much later. But though he was a doctor, he would not believe that how can the heart stop beating? How can a person lose all consciousness? Even if dilated the pupil, the definition of death as he had studied in medical school, he would obviously see for signs. And then you could not, it was at his wit's end. How can a person who is practically dead, no breathing, he checked. You see, it's there in the Great Master. Also in one gospel, he first made fun. He said, oh, this is just a hallucination. He was a scientist, he didn't believe. But then when it really happened, when he went into a high state, he was not even in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, just an ordinary Samadhi. He just ran with this instrument just to see whether he's breathing, whether the pulse is there, nothing is there. And then how do you explain? You just can't wish away such people. Maybe it happens once to a few people. Even if it happens to one person, you have to give an explanation if you are a scientist. You can't say just because 99.9% of the people don't have these states, they don't exist. They exist. So all the cerebral processes whether one is a scientist, psychologist, philosophers, they accept certain basic things which we have to discuss now, that because based on how we behave, how human beings behave, they can't deny these things. One is different thought processes. We have to explain how human being takes decision. A robot will take according to the data that is fed. You don't ask a robot or AI why, how we are taking these decisions. It will say, I have been programmed, so I'm taking decisions. But you can't say the same. You will see people taking decisions quite contrary to what we think they should take. So decisions, determination to do something and exercise your will, it is also known as deliberation. That I decide that I'll do this. Even if 100 people say I will do it, there are people who exercise their will. So how to explain decision making, how to explain willpower, volition, it is known as exercise of will, purpose, motive, and all those things. You can't just say that everything goes like a machine. That's why if we have a world with, somebody asked, if the whole world is full of robots, perhaps they'll never quarrel. If they have not been programmed, if they have been programmed to just live peacefully with each other, there will be no quarrel because there's no evil. But in human beings, that unpredictability, that he will do not according to what society wants, he will do what he wants. And he can cause, so we can't say, just as they say economics is not a perfect science, you can't predict. So also human nature is not a perfect science. A scientist or a doctor can never predict what a person will do because he has that freedom. He has the choice of action. He has the choice of taking decisions. He is capable of exercising his will and developing it so much that other people will feel it is, how can he exercise so much of willpower? Because we have seen people with one leg, that Arunima Sinha, she conquered not only Mount Everest with one leg, with an artificial leg, when normal people can't conquer. So it's a expression of willpower. So where does it come from? If it is just training, it would not be there. There's something which pushes. There's a marked difference between a decision taken consciously, deliberately, with thinking, with buddhi, than a mechanical process. We have to first understand that body, many things, 99% of the things maybe you can explain mechanically. For example, a mosquito sits, everybody will just, because it's the sense organ, it's a just mechanism which nature has evolved. The manas acts. Manas doesn't have to be told. When there is some less oxygen, the heart automatically beats fast to compensate. This, you don't have to tell the body to do all these things. The heartbeat, everything is self-regulatory, more or less. So that mechanical process, the autonomous nervous system, is also there. But there are many things which explore more and more possibilities. Our spinal cord is not so simple. Spinal cord, maybe one might study, but as I said, when we explain the spinal cord, we do not even know the function of the hollow in the spinal cord. Yogis found that when the nerve currents pass through that hollow, something known as Kundalini rises. And there are different states. They're not using, apparently they're not using the nervous system for their visions. They see visions. Because that is the explanation they give. That the goal of Patanjali's yoga is not allow the nervous currents to pass through the two parallel cords. The hollow is, they do their meditation and do all the different aspects of yoga in such a way. The idea of Kundalini, if you see, or the idea of the raising of consciousness in our spinal cord from the lower chakras to the higher chakras, you will find it is using the same nervous system, but it slowly becomes independent of the nervous system. The thoughts, the mind has the nervous current through the force of the will, force of our sadhana, it has to pass through the hollow, which is known as sushumna. So when the current, this was obviously medical science would not accept it, because they think we need for nervous current to pass and to be transmitted to the brain, to the organs, to all the autonomous or the sympathetic, whatever you call it. They all require a media. Obviously, the hollow of the nervous, the nerve cord or the spinal cord, they don't believe that it has any function in transmitting, because it's not a commonly observed phenomena. Kundalini, as they say, it's very easy. Everybody, if you went to the yoga festival, there were hundreds telling you that your Kundalini we can raise in it. Kundalini is not such a it's not a joke to, because it requires years and years of practice, years and years of sadhana to just prevent, because our body is normally follows the Ida and Pingala, the two nerve currents. We don't need training for that. It is already doing it 100 times, a million times a day. It is currents are going up from the sense organs and going to the brain, coming back. So it has been working, and to stop the working and force it through a hollow, which for which biology has no explanation why this hollow is there. Maybe there is some cerebrospinal fluid or something which gives some cushioning and all those things. I do not know. But nobody has ever explored the possibility of what happens if suddenly our wired system becomes wireless. It's as not as simple as that, but that is the only way I can explain. Suppose the cables that we have, if the cord was cut somewhere, electricity or the signals would not go, and then you would not have had communication. But then we found that wirelessly we can transfer so many things, information, data. So it is something similar, not the same, because that's not a good example. But if somehow our nerve currents pass through the hollow, then we become independent of the body. We don't express ourselves through the body. We were not forced to express. So anything that happens to the body doesn't impact you. Not that Sri Ramakrishna did not feel the pain, because most of the time the currents, nervous currents were passing through the Ida and Pingala. But whenever he wanted, when he made it pass through the Sushumna, he was independent. He could not feel. Otherwise, how would he transcend the body? So the only way of transcendence is not allow the nerve currents, when one is alive, not allow the nerve currents, even when one is alive. That is known as Jivan Mukti. You are connected, you are using your body, but your body is not binding you, because the nervous system is not binding you. The thoughts and the actions that perhaps, or the state in which you are, the nervous current is passing through the hollow of the spinal cord. So there's nothing that binds you to this world. So all the chakras, according to them, they just call it chakra because there's a concentration of nerve endings in that part of the spinal cord, right up to, there are 6 chakras. That's just arbitrary. And mind you, it is not easy, because we may feel some tingling sensation in the spine when we are meditating. People ask, oh, my Kundalini has come here, there. It doesn't come at so easily. It may take several lifetimes to even force that nervous current through the hollow. If you see Swamiji's Raj Yoga, he has very clearly said, it is after years and years of practice, one can hope to be independent of these bodily functions. So that is what is meant of body consciousness. Now we are intimately, we cannot think beyond our body consciousness. We cannot think beyond our mind consciousness. That is lower mind. If somebody says something, we immediately react. Even if you know it is temporary or it has no value, we keep worrying about it, because we are still on the state of the mind. If our buddhi had developed, which is again very rare, if that faculty of buddhi, then our mind behaves in a different way. We are in control. Buddhi is in control of the mind. The consciousness says it's, after all, they are all mental states. Somebody came and abused me. Okay, why do I have to get angry? For that, you need a discrimination, a viveka. Said, after all, what harm he has done me? You just don't react. That means your manas is not governed by your nervous system. No matter how much noise people create, even Swami Shardan used to say, how do you manage to write this book sitting in Udbodhan, the ground floor of Udbodhan, so noisy, even outside, inside, there were people making noises. He said, I just tell my mind to withdraw. It may be very easy, but it's difficult to practice. He would go to that state where the nervous system simply gave instructions to the Ida and Pingala, the nerves, that you may hear hundreds of noises, just don't react. So how does it happen? What is the process? So even one Swedish neuroscientist, Henry Bergson, once said, at least he admitted, he was not so fanatical that everything can be explained through the nervous system, the brain and the heart and all those things. He said there is infinitely more in a human consciousness than a corresponding brain. He didn't say what it was because there was no way, we had no access to our Shastras. But the brain, and he said, these are his words, brain cannot secrete thought as liver secretes bile. So biologically, now of course they have developed, neuroscience has developed a lot. They never say that now. So you just can't, brain does not secrete consciousness. You may say bile secretes, liver secretes the bile juice, and that does all the functions, and that we can explain how digestion takes place. All these things are true for the body. But brain does not secrete thoughts. It's not a product of this particular thought unless we understand consciousness which is shining more through the buddhi than the mind, and which is independent of both the mind and the buddhi. Buddhi also is a reflected thing. So the self, being the cognizer, it witnesses everything, but it is not part of that phenomena. Because otherwise, you say, I mean, according to some of the biologists, they'll say the body goes, consciousness goes. Consciousness is zero in that person. But that is not true. So when we first admit, or when we first accept, as a corollary, we cannot give proof for this because yogis say unless you realize that state, but you have to give the yogis a chance to explain that thought is not a function of the mind. Mind is expressing us, thought is a function of our mind, because thoughts are also things, but not of the brain. So that idea, that root idea, that brain is not the origin of our thoughts. They have an origin outside the brain, but brain processes it as an instrument and conveys it to the organs, sense organs, the different sense organs, and then you react. So reaction is definitely what the nervous system helps you to do with the help of the brain, but the origin of thought, or the thoughts, they are quite different. Now, what those thoughts are, what the mind is, that is another topic for discussion. Because our scientists knew that, our scientists in the sense, our spiritual Patanjali and all other Upanishads, they try to, because you can't analyze it as you analyze and do experiments. Even the modern physics and all, many things you cannot have instruments to measure. You have to mathematically calculate and come to certain conclusions. Similarly, once they understood that you don't need a brain is just expressing our consciousness, then what is the source of consciousness? So they said, can we use some other methods to come to a conclusion? What is this consciousness? If it is not the brain, if it is not through the heart it expresses, then what is its source, and where does it come from? Then they started analyzing dream state, because they found that even during dream you are thinking, though you are not conscious. Obviously not, you are conscious in the way biologists will tell you that you are conscious now. You can see people, you can talk, you can respond. If you are normal, at least you can respond normally. But even in waking state, if you are abnormal, if a person is, for some reason, is autistic, the brain is not functioning properly, he may give vague answers. He may not be able to respond properly. So even taking for granted a healthy brain, an ideal brain, it can respond perfectly. Still, you have to explain the phenomena of dream. Maybe you say it is just a psychologist's field, but still a neurologist can't escape from explaining the state of mind. How do dreams occur? Where do the objects come from? Are they real? Are they unreal? There are many things. So and even in deep sleep, though he is not conscious, at that time they say one is not conscious of the body and the brain and, or you may say the heart, whatever it is. We are not conscious because we are in deep sleep. Everything seems to have been shut off. But the consciousness is accepted that we were conscious during. Nobody will say, I died when I was in deep sleep. The same person will say, I was alive, but I had a good sleep. They will always say, I had a good sleep. They won't say, oh, somebody who was Mr. So-and-so had a good sleep, now I'm another person. That continuity, that I-ness doesn't go. So, whatever be the manifestation of consciousness, whether it is through body, heartbeat, and the organs, it is noticeable in the physical body and organs only in the waking state. But in the dream state, you may say, Sri Ramakrishna used to explain in his very simple language, what happens to our body? Do we use our body during dream? He said, no, you have a dream body. Because otherwise, how will you go travel fantastic distances? Not obviously in the physical body. But still it is not unreal because you can see in the dream, there are people, there are interactions, you may be talking with someone. So who does the talking? It's the dream self or the dream body for the time being. So that shows that there are many subtle things which we have to analyze before we even go to the transcendental or pure consciousness. So if there are some questions you can ask, just see the chat box. Yeah, we are running short of time. Any question? Yeah, you can ask. Is there anything or we'll conclude? Yes. We are just waiting for the online questions to be asked. They take some time to type. They take some. Huh? Okay. So next weekend, I'll not be here. And those who are listening to the talk from Scotland, if you have not already been informed, I have heard that nearly 150, nearly 130 to 140 people have registered so far. So there will be a retreat on Saturday, not Sunday, Saturday, the 19th of August in Edinburgh. So if you want, if you are on WhatsApp, if you have not received the link where you could register, I have posted it maybe 1 month ago. So there is a link. It's a Google link. If you just click and register, if you are coming, of course, because we are taking care of catering, lunch, tea, morning, it's 9 to 4, followed by a children's session in the afternoon. So about 30 children have registered for that. So it's a full day retreat. If you are living anywhere near Scotland, in and around Scotland, in and around Edinburgh, or even further down, you may register yourself. If you don't have the link, I'll post it today, so you have enough time to register in case you want to be physically present. But it will, as usual, as we are doing now, it will be online as well. At least most of the talks. I don't know whether we'll get good Wi-Fi there. Hopefully, last time we could. So if it is possible, we'll have it online on Zoom as well as YouTube Live. So please register. And Sunday also, I'll be there. there's a program in Heriot-Watt University in the evening, 4 o'clock. So I'll be coming only on Monday morning, Monday afternoon. There is one question. So Gaurav is reading it to me.
How to train the buddhi to have more conscious shining on it? Kindly explain, Maharaj.
So now the question is, I'll try to briefly answer. All of you heard how the different faculties of the mind or the different layers of the mind influence a personality. And the question is, since I said buddhi is reflecting more of the consciousness than the mind, than the manas, how to develop it? How to
train the buddhi to
how to train the buddhi to
have more conscious shining on it.
Okay. So buddhi also develops in the sense, just as we develop the mind, when we train the mind, you see, from a very crude mind, a very reactive mind, we convert it into a skilled mind. Skilled mind means you train your mind or train your body and all your organs in such a way that when certain inputs come, you react in a particular way, in a very nice way. You just train your mind and train your skill sets. See, that is what education is all about. Secular education is all about training the mind to be mathematically correct, to be analytical, to do things in a very reasonable way, not just... so all these things, they impact the mind. But what about the buddhi? Now the question that is asked is how to train the mind that it reflects more and more of the consciousness. Now, for that, the Indian method, if we go to the ancient Indian tradition, where a child was given Gayatri Mantra, though many people have almost forgotten that tradition, it is supposed to be given at the age of between 6 and 8. That's the right age when the child has to start his spiritual journey along with his mental and physical development. So that was the ideal scheme of education. But anyway, that's not part of the curriculum anymore. So Gayatri Mantra is exactly a prayer where you pray to the Supreme Consciousness, which symbolically is represented by the sun, because light, among all the lights that we see, the sun is the most brightest, though there are many stars brighter than that. But for our practical purposes, the sun is the brightest object. So we don't pray to the sun as a physical sun. We pray to the light in the sun, or pray to the element of light in the sun to enlighten our intellect, make it shine more so that we make more conscious choices in our life. We take the right step. We use our wisdom to do the right thing, and more importantly, do the right thing at the right time. Not when things have gone wrong and then we repent, saying, oh, we ought to have done this, we ought to have done that. So that choice making itself which is known as viveka. Viveka is not something which is developed and you use it now and then. No, it has to be, for a spiritual person, it has to be every moment, because every moment we have to take a decision to do what is good, to do what takes us higher and develop our buddhi. So one of the ways is, as you said, how to sharpen it, or how to develop it, or how to see that it radiates more light, is prayer. Because prayer itself is a spiritual practice. It's something like meditation. Maybe the mantra is slightly bigger, because the Gayatri Mantra is quite long. But it's the meaning of the mantra that is important. And in fact, according to the mantra tradition, the same meaning or the same function is done by any other mantra, shorter mantras also. Most of the sound symbols, the meaning of the mantra is to remove my ignorance and give me spiritual light. So whether you say Om Bhur Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimai Dhiyo Yona Prachodayata. Dhiyo Yona Prachodayata means illumine my intellect more and more. But it definitely can be achieved through prayer, because prayer is nothing but an act of will. We don't have that willpower now, so we pray to the Lord constantly, consistently, just as we would do japa again and again and again. We do just to develop that persistence, that will. That development of willpower, which happens as a result of repeating Gayatri Mantra, the prayer, or our any mantra for that matter, because the meaning is the same. Oh Lord, help me. Oh Lord, or oh Lord of consciousness, help me to be more conscious than what I was before. So that is how gradually, ideally, it should start at the age of 6, but it doesn't happen in most of the cases, even if the ritualistically somebody does. Now, unfortunately, there are so many restrictions that certain castes can say, girls cannot say, only boys can do. So many people have been deprived of this wonderful method, which is a basic method. It's not the final word in developing consciousness. There are other yogas, there are other mantras, there are other higher sadhanas. But to begin with, Gayatri Mantra is a good mantra which helps you to refine your consciousness so that you reflect more and more of the light. Finished? No, one more.
Maharaj would like to know about Chitta and Ahankara.
Oh, that will be a big topic. To tell you briefly, maybe I'll take it up because we are dealing with the mind now. We are just focused on Buddhi this time. Chitta and Ahankara are the other two. As you're right, Manas and Buddhi we understood now, more or less. A reactive mind and an illumined mind, or a choice-making mind. But what about Chitta and Ahankara? So to tell you briefly, Ahankara means ego. So ego has a big role to play because it's our ego that makes us do what we want to do, what we don't want to do. It's ego is very important. Even to make a decision, you should have a strong ego. So ego is not always bad. Thakur used to say kacha ami and paka ami. So kacha ami means a raw ego. Paka ami means a ripe ego. Ripe ego is very good because that says I'm a child of God, I'm a devotee of God, I'm a spiritual man. That ego is good because that ego has to be there. Otherwise, how will you develop spiritually? If you always hate yourself, that's why in spirituality they say the first thing you have to stop is to hate your own self. That is also because of ego, but it's a negative ego. You have been trained or brainwashed by people around you that you are useless, and then you really believe. Your ego becomes so negative that even if people say you are good, you can do this, you can do. Say no, I can't do it. That's also an ego, but it's a negative ego. So that is as far as ego is concerned. But it is a lot more complex things are there about the ego. We'll discuss it in the next class. But Chitta is very important because what does Chitta do in our mind? Chitta is important because Chitta is like you may say in a computer, it is a hard disk. So hard disk is where all the data is there. Whether you use it or not, it is different. But it's a receptacle of all our samskaras, not of this life, but of all the lives. So it's the sum total of what we have done. It's like a record. So all the processes that have passed through the computer, the keyboard and all, you can do whatever you like. But what is stored is stored. That data, that all those things, that cannot be changed. Maybe you change the computer, you take up another body, but that same hard disk goes and you retrieve the data. Something similar to that. But Chitta is important because that is what leaves our body. So sum total of our samskaras in a very, very, very subtle form, they are transmitted to the next birth. See, next birth, there's no guarantee you'll get the same mind, similar mind. You may get a totally different mind because it's most external. And obviously you get a different body because your parents will be biologically different. You may be born in a different place. Body will be different. Even the mind will be different because mind is something which dissolves immediately after death. Manas goes away, but Chitta remains. Chitta is the Karana Sharira, the causal body, which will give you the tendencies. That's the reason why we don't remember our past birth. Because all the memories are lost. All the memories are lost. The chitta is that faculty which stores everything in the form of tendencies. You should not mistake it. Otherwise, memories, short-lived thoughts, I mean the current thoughts and all those things, they will not possible after death. In the new birth, the next birth, you inherit a totally different body and mind complex. But chitta doesn't change. That is why Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that even if you don't attain spirituality in this life, don't worry, you will continue from where you left. But that is only the spiritual part, not the assets that obviously you can't take it. Though someone ridiculously, I saw a program, he said, why don't you have a bank where we will pay you in the next birth? We just deposit everything. Somehow if you come to know and prove that you were so and so, I mean, it's ridiculous. You can't do that because you can't take your physical assets and store it and like you keep money in the bank, somebody else can encash it. That doesn't happen. So the physical, the difference between manas and chitta is that manas is something like RAM in the computer. You just, when you switch off, everything goes away. Whereas the hard disk, the memories remain. They can be transferred to another body. And in the process, your basic tendencies, the basic, you may say, inherent tendencies. It has a nice name. It is known as samskaras. Chitta is a storehouse of samskaras. It's also known as, Swamiji has translated it as mind stuff. But it's very difficult to understand what this mind stuff is. But in general, that chitta is an important part of our mind. But that collection that you make in that chitta will depend to a large extent on the training of the buddhi you have done. So that is possible only through spiritual practices. That is why people did not bother about this chitta too much. Chitta is there, it's going to store whatever you put in. But you need a buddhi. So training of the buddhi through Gayatri Mantra and later through mantras, which we chant, helps you to create the right type of samskaras, which will automatically be stored. It will be available to us whenever we want it. But first you have to accumulate. That is the difference between chitta and manas and chitta and buddhi. So I think it is clear, but we'll discuss it in the next class. Okay.
Small question.
Yeah.
If we are practicing mantra, which we get during initiation, will it not help our buddhi to develop?
Obviously, mantra helps not only to store the samskaras in the chitta, because it is, see, when you pray, even the Gayatri Mantra, for example, it doesn't say just illumine my intellect. It definitely means, but if the intellect is illumined, naturally, the mind is illumined, the body is also in a indirect way illumined. It's like bringing a bright light in a room. It will illuminate everything that is in the room. It will not be selective in saying, no, I will illuminate only the mind, body will remain as it is. Of course, because the body is more gross, it will take more time. So that's why Patanjali and all, they said, spiritual practices will help in good health. That's why Hatha Yoga and all were developed. But he said that should not be your focus, because then it will be trivializing the gains you have. If you use that, obviously it will help you, the physical body, but that will be wasting time. It's much better to get illumination and illumine your intellect. Any more? Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna